My husband kissed me on the forehead the morning he left, and I let him. I stood at the front door in my robe, arms wrapped around myself against the November cold, and I watched him load his suitcases into the cab. He turned back once, gave me that slow, easy smile, the one I used to fall asleep thinking about, and said, "2 years will fly by, Lena. You'll see." I nodded. I even managed to look sad. I was sad, just not for the reason he thought. His name is Joel. Joel Prescott. We met at a mutual friend's birthday party when I was 26 and he was 31, and I thought I had found the kind of man my grandmother always described when she talked about my grandfather. Steady, warm, someone who made you feel like the room got quieter when you walked in. We got married 18 months later in a small ceremony in Connecticut. I wore my mother's pearls. His mother cried. I thought we were building something real. I was a graphic designer at a mid-size agency in Philadelphia. Joel was in corporate finance, smart, disciplined with money, which I admired because I wasn't. Over 6 years of marriage, we both worked hard. We put nearly everything into a joint savings account. A house fund, we called it. We've been talking about buying something in the suburbs, maybe out toward Malvern or Wayne, somewhere with a yard and good school districts, even though we didn't have kids yet. By the time Joel got the call about the Singapore assignment, we had $740,000 sitting in that account. The call came from his company on a Tuesday. A 2-year project managing financial infrastructure for their Southeast Asia division, Singapore. Fully company-sponsored relocation. He'd be in the top tier of the team. He came home that evening and told me over dinner, and his whole face was lit up like I hadn't seen in years. "This is the kind of thing that changes a career trajectory," he said. "It's once in a lifetime, Lena." I asked if I could come. He paused just a half second too long. "The company is only sponsoring me," he said. "And your job? You'd have to leave your job." "I know," I said. "I'm asking if you want me to come." He reached across the table and took my hand. "Of course I want you there, but it doesn't make sense financially for you to quit your position. 2 years will go so fast. We'll video call every day." I smiled and said okay, but something had already shifted in me, not because of what he said, because of what I had already found 3 weeks earlier. It started with a phone notification I wasn't supposed to see. Joel had left his phone on the bathroom counter while he was in the shower, and a message preview popped up. I wasn't snooping. I wasn't that kind of wife. But I saw the name Petra and the first 6 words of the message before the screen went dark, and those 6 words were enough to make my stomach drop through the floor. "Can't wait to see you next." I put the phone exactly where I found it. I went into the kitchen and poured myself a glass of water and stood at the sink for a long time. Over the next 3 weeks, I paid attention in ways I hadn't before. Not obsessively. I wasn't following him or hiring anyone, I just noticed things. The way he angled his phone away when texts came in, the evenings he said he was working late but came home smelling not like the office but like somewhere else. A restaurant, maybe. Somewhere that used a specific kind of cedar candle. The way our conversations had slowly, over months, become about logistics instead of anything real. When did that start? I couldn't pinpoint it exactly. It had been gradual, like water damage. You don't see it until the ceiling caves. Then he got the Singapore offer, and I understood. Not all at once, but quickly enough. This wasn't just a career opportunity. This was an exit strategy, or at least it was both things at once. And the fact that he could hold both of those truths in his hands and still look across the dinner table at me and squeeze my hand, that was the thing I couldn't stop thinking about. I didn't confront him. I had learned by then that confrontation without preparation is just noise. I made an appointment with a family law attorney named Raymond Cole, whose office was in Center City and who had been recommended to me by a friend who worked in HR and had seen enough to know things. I told Raymond everything. He listened without interrupting, made notes, and then leaned back in his chair. "Pennsylvania is an equitable distribution state," he said. "That means assets acquired during the marriage are divided fairly, not always 50-50, but fairly. The key word is marital assets. Money earned during the marriage, deposited into a joint account, qualifies. I asked about the $740,000 joint account, both names on it, he said. Yes. Then that's marital property. Either of you has the legal right to withdraw from it. Before we do anything else, I want you to document everything you can account statements, your pay stubs, any evidence of contributions. And I want you to open a separate account in your name only. Today, if possible. I opened the account that afternoon, Truist Bank, personal checking, just my name. The week before Joel left for Singapore, I was calm in a way that surprised even me. I helped him pack. I ordered his favorite takeout, pho, from the place on Walnut Street because he always craved it before a long trip. I sat across from him at the kitchen table and listened to him talk about the project, the team he'd be leading, the apartment the company had arranged for him in the Marina Bay area. It's a one-bedroom, he mentioned. Casually, the way you mention the weather. A one-bedroom for a 2-year assignment for a man whose wife had just agreed not to come. I nodded and said that sounded efficient. The night before he left, he held me and said he loved me, and I said it back, because in some complicated, grief-stricken part of me, it was still true. Not the version of love that holds a future in it, more like the kind you feel for something that's already over. His flight was at 6 in the morning out of Philadelphia International. He wanted to leave the house at 30:30 to be safe. I set my alarm for 3, made coffee, stood in the kitchen in the dark while he did a final sweep of the bedroom. At the door, he turned to me with that smile again. "Don't cry," he said softly. I let my eyes fill. It wasn't hard. There was genuinely something to grieve. He pulled me in and held me for a long moment, and then he was in the cab, and then the cab was gone, and I stood on the front step until the taillights disappeared around the corner. Then I went inside. I made a fresh cup of coffee. I sat at the kitchen table and waited until 6 o'clock, until I knew his flight had boarded. Then I called Raymond. He'd been expecting my call. We had already discussed the timeline. I went to my bank that morning and transferred $620,000 from the joint account into my personal account. I left $120,000 behind, enough to make it clear I wasn't trying to strip him of everything, enough to demonstrate, if it ever came to that I had acted reasonably. Raymond had advised me carefully on this. Document the transfer, keep every record. The fact that you left a significant portion behind actually works in your favor if this goes to litigation. I sat in the bank while the wire transfer processed and thought about the 6-word preview on his phone. I thought about the cedar candle smell. I thought about the one-bedroom apartment in Marina Bay. The transfer took 11 minutes. I filed for divorce the following week through Raymond's office. He handled everything. It was filed electronically. I didn't need to go anywhere. Joel was served through his company's HR contact in Singapore as Raymond had arranged with their legal team. I didn't call Joel to tell him. I didn't send a message. He called me 4 days later. I let it go to voicemail. His voice on the recording was very controlled. Too controlled, like he'd practiced it. "Lena, I got the papers. I think we need to talk. Call me back." I played it twice. Then I texted Raymond and told him Joel had been served. Joel's attorney reached out within the week. They contested the transfer, of course. His position was that I had acted unilaterally and in bad faith, that removing $620,000 from a joint account during the marriage constituted dissipation of marital assets. Raymond was ready. 6 years of pay stubs, my agency's direct deposit records, the documentation showing that in years 3 through 6 of our marriage, I had contributed approximately 63% of the deposits into that joint account. Joel earned more per year, but he had also carried a personal investment account that I had no joint access to, one he had opened before we married and continued funding throughout. We hadn't merged everything. He had kept a separate stream of wealth I wasn't part of. Raymond built the case carefully. When you can demonstrate that the majority of the contested funds originated from your own labor and income, equitable distribution arguments shift. We weren't just dividing an account. We were tracing where the money actually came from. The mediation took 3 sessions. Joel flew back for the final one. I saw him across a conference room table for the first time in 4 months, and he looked the same, mostly, maybe a little thinner. He didn't look at me directly for the first 20 minutes. At one point, his attorney said something about the emotional difficulty of a long distance assignment on a marriage, and I watched Joel's jaw tighten slightly, and I thought, he knows that argument is fragile and he knows why. We didn't go to trial. In the end, the settlement gave me $490,000. Joel retained $250,000 from the joint account plus his personal investment portfolio, and the house, which we were renting, not owning, required no division. It was over in 5 months from the date of filing. Joel's attorney sent a final document. I signed it on a Tuesday afternoon in Raymond's office using a pen Raymond kept in a green cup on his desk. It was anticlimactic in the best possible way. I want to tell you about the months in between because they weren't easy, and I think that's the part that gets left out of stories like this. I still went to work every day at the agency. I still sat in on client calls and reviewed brand decks and made adjustments to color palettes that felt meaningless and necessary at the same time. My coworker Jess, who has known me since I was a junior designer, barely keeping track of her own deadlines, figured out something was wrong within a week. I didn't tell her everything, but I told her enough. She brought me soup once. Not dramatically. She just left it on my desk in a takeout container with a sticky note that said for eating, obviously. I cried more over that soup than I had over anything else. My sister, who lives outside of Nashville, called every Sunday. She didn't push for details. She just called. That consistency, week after week. I'm not sure she knows how much it steadied me. There were nights I questioned myself. Not the decision. I was clear about the decision. But the version of myself who had missed it for so long. When did I stop seeing him clearly? Was it gradual, or had I chosen not to look? I don't have a clean answer. I think I had been comfortable in the shape of our life together, the rhythm of it, and I had mistaken comfort for health. I see that now. About 2 months after the divorce was finalized, I was at a gallery opening for a friend who does installation art. Big, chaotic pieces that make you feel like you're inside someone else's nervous system, which is exactly what I needed that particular evening. I'd gone alone, which I was getting used to. I ended up in a conversation near the back of the gallery with a man named Owen. He was there for the same friend. Turned out he and she had gone to grad school together. He was an architect. Quiet in the way that's actually just careful, he listened before he spoke, which felt startling and then felt like relief. We talked for almost 2 hours about the art, about Philadelphia, about a road trip he'd done along the Oregon coast the previous summer, about the specific kind of loneliness that comes after something ends, even something that needed to end. He asked for my number when we left. I gave it to him. I want to be honest, I wasn't ready. Not fully. I knew that even as I handed him my phone so he could add his contact. But there was something about being seen, just seen, by someone with no history with me, no narrative about who I was, that felt like the first genuine breath I'd taken in months. We've been taking it slowly, that's the right word for it. Slowly and honestly, and with a kind of care I hadn't known I was missing. I moved into a one-bedroom apartment in Fishtown in March. It's smaller than the house I shared with Joel, which I thought would bother me and doesn't. There's a window in the kitchen that gets morning light, and I've started drinking my coffee there instead of at the table, and that small shift, just moving where I stand, has felt like something. The $490,000 is in a high-yield savings account. Raymond recommended I speak with a financial advisor before doing anything else, and I did. A woman named Patricia Knowles who works with a fee-only firm near Rittenhouse Square. She helped me understand what I actually had, enough to buy a home in cash in many markets, enough to build something solid and entirely mine. We set up a plan. It's not dramatic. It's just deliberate, which might be what I was always missing. I've been thinking a lot lately about what I would tell a younger version of myself. Not the version who chose Joel. I don't think I'd change that, because I also chose 6 years of genuine experiences and learned things I couldn't have learned otherwise. But I tell her this: know where your money is. Know what percentage of the shared account came from your paycheck. Know the account numbers. Know your own credit score. Not because you're planning to leave, but because financial clarity is not a betrayal of trust. It is, in fact, how you protect both yourself and your partner. A marriage where only one person understands the finances isn't a partnership, it's a dependency. Keep your own account, even if it only has a few $100s in it, even if it feels unnecessary, especially if it feels unnecessary. I have a friend who told me recently that she thought keeping a separate account from her husband was somehow disloyal. I understand that feeling. I had some version of it myself for years. But loyalty is about how you treat someone. It is not about dissolving yourself entirely into a shared structure that only works if the other person remains trustworthy. People change, situations change. You are allowed to protect yourself. That's not cynicism, that's wisdom. Joel and I don't speak. I don't think we'll be the kind of exes who become friends. There's no anger in that, or there's less anger now than there was. But there's also nothing left to build between us. He is somewhere in his life doing whatever he chose, and I am here in my morning light kitchen, beginning something I can't fully name yet but am no longer afraid of. The divorce papers finalized on a Thursday. I walked out of Raymond's office onto Market Street, and it was one of those strange late winter days that feels almost like spring. Too warm for February. The kind of day that feels like a mistake in the best possible way. I stood on the sidewalk for a minute, just standing. Not crying, not celebrating, just present in my own body, in my own city, in my own name. That was enough. That was enough. That was actually more than enough. I drove home, made coffee, sat at my window, started over. I've thought a lot about what it means to act with integrity when someone else has already stopped. When Joel kissed my forehead that morning and told me 2 years would fly by, he believed I was the same woman I'd been for the past 6 years, patient, trusting, quietly holding everything together while he made decisions I wasn't fully part of. And for a long time, I was that woman. I don't say that with shame. I say it as a fact about who I was and who I had to stop being. Here's what I know about cause and effect, not in any mystical sense, just in the plainest human sense. The choices we make quietly, consistently, over months and years accumulate into outcomes we call fate. Joel didn't betray me in a single moment. He made 100 small choices to face away from me, and I made 100 small choices to not look too closely at what that meant. We were both responsible for the shape our marriage took. The difference is that when I finally saw it clearly, I chose to act with my eyes open instead of closing them again. I did not take $620,000 because I was angry. I took it because Raymond helped me understand that money I had earned, contributed, and documented was mine to protect, legally, factually, without apology. Anger is a fog. What I operated in was clarity. Those are not the same thing, and I think that distinction matters more than people give it credit for. The hardest part wasn't the transfer. It wasn't even the divorce. It was the weeks in between. Sitting in my apartment at night, asking myself whether I had missed something, whether I had been too quick, whether some version of a conversation I never had could have changed anything. I let myself sit with those questions. I didn't rush past them. That's the part no one tells you, that doing the right thing for yourself doesn't feel triumphant in the moment. It mostly just feels quiet and a little lonely and very final. But here's what I also know, that loneliness was honest, and honest loneliness is something you can build from. What I had before, the comfortable, unexamined life I thought was a marriage, that was a different kind of loneliness. The kind you don't recognize until you're out of it. The $490,000 I walked away with is sitting in a high-yield account. I have a financial plan now, built with someone who explained things to me in plain language and treated my future like it was worth protecting. I understand my own money. I know my credit score. I know my account numbers. I know what I'm building toward. That knowledge, the simple, unglamorous, practical knowledge of my own financial life, is something I will never again hand over to another person to manage on my behalf. If there is anything I would want someone to take from my story, it is this. Intelligence is not just what you know, it is the willingness to look at uncomfortable things directly, to gather information before you act, and to act from that information rather than from fear or habit. Courage is not the absence of doubt. It is doing the necessary thing while the doubt is still there, because you've decided that your own life is worth the discomfort of honesty. I am 31 years old. I have a morning light kitchen, a plan, and someone named Owen who listens before he speaks. That is more than enough to start with.